This is a country living at the absolute forefront of 21st century technology, yet simultaneously dragged down by 19th century infrastructure. Welcome to India. Here, hard facts that completely upend global perceptions are unfolding. First, a massive population shift. According to the latest demographic data, India's population has officially surpassed 1.44 billion, overtaking China to become the world's most populous nation. What is even more striking is its demographic structure. India's median age is just 28.2 years old, meaning its working age population accounts for a staggering 68% of the total population. While the Western world and parts of Asia are confronting aging crises and drying labor pools, India's streets are packed with young people full of energy. Second, the shifting global supply chain. Top-tier global tech giants that have long relied on made in China, such as Apple, are shifting their core iPhone production lines to India at an unprecedented pace. Analytical forecasts predict that approximately 20% to 25% of the world's iPhones will soon be assembled in India. Finally, there is its incredible growth. Against a backdrop of widespread global economic downturn and high inflation over recent years, data from the International Monetary Fund shows that India has maintained an annual real economic growth rate of nearly 7%, outshining all other major global economies. Its total GDP has already surpassed that of the United Kingdom, firmly securing its position as the world's fifth largest economy. Yet, the moment you truly set foot on this land, you are struck by a profound sense of societal fracture. On the wide, clean central avenues of New Delhi, the government is spending billions of dollars to renovate the Parliament building, showcasing its ambition for great power status. Yet, just a few kilometers away, millions of impoverished citizens sleep in plastic shanties along train tracks, enduring a life devoid of clean drinking water and sewage systems. In the financial hubs of Gurgaon, the glass curtain walls of multinational corporations glitter in the sunset. But in the nearby rural villages of Haryana, hundreds of young men spark riots out of sheer desperation because they cannot find a security guard job that pays $200 a month. Right now, global short sellers, Wall Street investment banks, and geopolitical strategists are locked in a fierce debate over an ultimate cliffhanger. Will this massive South Asian subcontinent truly replace China to become the next global economic engine? Or will it follow the path of many nations that failed to take off in history, ultimately sinking into a massive quagmire of wealth inequality and rampant unemployment? To understand India's economy today, we must rewind the clock back to 1947. That year, India broke free from British colonial rule and declared its independence. Its first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, stood atop the Red Fort and proclaimed that India was embarking on a tryst with destiny. However, due to nearly 2 centuries of brutal wealth plunder by Western colonialists, India's founding leaders harbored an instinctive, deep-seated fear of foreign capital, multinational corporations, and the free market. Consequently, India chose a highly unique path, a highly centralized, socialist planned economy wrapped in the outer shell of a Western democratic system. Instead of aligning with Western capitalism, they drew heavy inspiration from the Soviet Union's 5-year plans. During this era, India birthed a system that struck terror into the heart of every entrepreneur, the License Raj. Under the rule of the License Raj, India's economic vitality was completely frozen. Imagine trying to open a textile mill in India back then, or simply wanting to manufacture a few more bicycles at your existing factory. You had to navigate a bureaucratic maze across various government departments in New Delhi for years, or even decades, just to get approval. You needed hundreds of official stamps, had to grease the palms of countless bureaucrats, and hand out endless bribes. Even more absurdly, the government not only decided who could produce, but also strictly regulated the maximum annual output, the number of workers hired, and the selling price of products. If you ran a car manufacturing plant and market demand suddenly surged, choosing to produce an extra 100 cars without permission brought no profit, only criminal penalties for violating state law. In those days, an ordinary Indian family looking to buy a domestically produced ambassador car often had to wait in line for an entire decade because production was choked by government quotas. This extreme manipulation of the market strangled the nation's commercial vitality for 30 years. Western scholars even coined a satirical term for India's economic growth rate during this period, calling it the Hindu rate of growth, which remained stubbornly stuck at a meager 3.5%. This deeply rigid, isolationist system finally triggered a catastrophic crisis in 1991. With the end of the Cold War, India lost its largest trading partner and benefactor. To make matters worse, the outbreak of the Gulf War sent global oil prices skyrocketing. As a nation heavily reliant on imported petroleum, India's foreign exchange expenditures spiraled out of control. By the summer of 1991, India's foreign exchange reserves were completely depleted. The national treasury held a mere $1.2 billion, barely enough to cover less than 2 weeks of national imports. India was on the brink of bankruptcy. If it failed to pay its international bills within days, the country would default within the global financial system, rendering it an absolute international pariah with ruined credit. To save itself, India's caretaker government at the time made a painful and humiliating decision. In the dead of night, New Delhi officials removed 67 tons of physical gold from the state vaults and secretly loaded it onto planes. 47 tons were flown to the Bank of England in London, and 20 tons to Union Bank of Switzerland in Zurich, serving as collateral for a $600 million emergency loan from the IMF. When the news leaked that the nation's gold reserves had been shipped out of the country, the entire population was outraged. For a culture that views gold as the ultimate symbol of familial and national dignity, this was nothing short of a national humiliation. Yet, it was this massive humiliation that forced India onto the operating table for life-saving surgery, the economic liberalization of 1991. The newly appointed finance minister, who would later become Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh, delivered a historic speech to Parliament, quoting the famous words, "An idea whose time has come is more powerful than all the armies in the world." With swift strokes, Singh unshackled the economy. He dismantled the notorious License Raj, lifted output restrictions on private enterprises, drastically slashed import tariffs, and for the very first time, opened India's doors to foreign direct investment. This was the historic turning point. Starting from a GDP of less than $2,700 billion in 1991, India's economic curve began an aggressive upward climb, multiplying more than tenfold over 3 decades to breach the $3.5 trillion milestone. It systematically overtook Italy, France, and the UK, and is now closing in on Japan and Germany. And the ultimate trump card in its hands is its population. When comparing global population pyramids, a stark contrast emerges. Europe, Japan, and China are rapidly aging, while India's demographic structure remains a perfect triangle. The rest of humanity is growing old, but India remains young. Demographic data projects that India's working-age population will continue its positive growth for the next 30 years. This means that while other major global economies buckle under the weight of rising dependency ratios and mounting aging debts, India possesses an endless, low-cost supply of young labor. This is what global capital views as India's incredibly attractive demographic dividend. So, what exactly is driving this giant forward? The answer lies within 5 core economic engines. The first engine is the consumption tsunami of 1.4 billion people. According to reports from leading global institutions, India's middle-class population is expanding by tens of millions of people every year and is projected to make up 80% of the total population by 2030. What does this actually mean? It means that future India will house over 1 billion consumers with real purchasing power. Why are global multinational giants, from Apple to Tesla and Starbucks to Nike, aggressively courting India? Even top executives of these multinational corporations are personally flying to Mumbai and New Delhi to cut the ribbons for India's first flagship retail stores. The answer boils down to 2 words: domestic demand. With Western domestic markets saturated and growth plateauing, India has become the sole remaining frontier of wealth for global capital. Look at the micro-level data. While smartphone penetration in India is already high, hundreds of millions of people are still preparing to upgrade from basic feature phones to smartphones. India's passenger vehicle ownership currently stands at fewer than 30 cars per 1,000 people, compared to over 800 per 1,000 people in the United States. This means that if every Indian spends just $1 more a day on a cup of coffee, a new piece of clothing, or an extra gigabyte of data, that amount, when multiplied by a base of 1.4 billion people, creates an astronomical, unmissable hypermarket for global capital. The second engine is leapfrog development and the software empire. Traditional economic theory dictates a very rigid path for industrial upgrading. A nation must start with low-end manufacturing, accumulating its initial capital through cheap apparel and footwear exports before advancing to heavy industry and high-end manufacturing and finally birthing a modern service industry as wealth accumulates. But India completely ripped up the textbook. It skipped the manufacturing stage almost entirely and leaped straight into the modern service sector. Today, the service industry consistently accounts for over 50% of India's GDP, a phenomenon famously known in economics as premature deindustrialization. How did India pull off this unconventional leap? Credit goes to the global internet boom of the 1980s and 1990s, coupled with India's unique advantages in English language proficiency and technical education. The secret weapon behind this success is the Indian Institutes of Technology, IIT. A widely circulated saying in India goes, "If I can't get into IIT, I'll just have to go to Harvard or MIT in America." This is barely an exaggeration. The overall acceptance rate for IIT hovers consistently below 1%, making the competition brutal. Every year, over 1 million of India's top minds sit for the entrance exams, and only a few thousand successfully pass through its gates. This unforgiving elite selection process has not only birthed homegrown software outsourcing titans, but has also continuously supplied top-tier executives to global tech hubs. Today, a fact that brings immense pride to the Indian people is that the CEOs of the world's leading tech giants, including Google, Microsoft, Adobe, and IBM, are all of Indian descent. India's IT service sector generates over $150 billion in foreign exchange revenue annually, keeping the country perfectly synchronized with the absolute cutting edge of the global tech wave. The third engine is manufacturing catching the wind of the China Plus One strategy. While the service sector is exceptionally strong, the mastermind policymakers in the Indian government know very well that no matter how lucrative the software industry is, it can only support a few million elites. It cannot save the hundreds of millions of impoverished farmers at the bottom of the pyramid. Consequently, upon taking office, Modi launched the ambitious Make in India initiative, vowing to boost manufacturing's share of GDP from 15% to 25%. Coincidentally, traditional multinational corporations, eager to reduce their reliance on any single production base, began a frantic search for alternative manufacturing hubs. The Indian government capitalized on this trend by launching a $26 billion production-linked incentive (PLI) scheme, using direct financial subsidies to attract multinational giants to set up factories. Apple became the ultimate bellwether. Its largest assembler, Foxconn, poured billions of dollars into building sprawling, multi-acre megafactories in the states of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Just a few years ago, India-made iPhones accounted for a negligible 1% of global production. Today, the assembly and global shipment of top-tier flagship iPhone series happen simultaneously in both China and India. Alongside Apple, South Korean giant Samsung and various Western automotive parts manufacturers are aggressively shifting their capacity to India. The country is fast becoming an unignorable new magnet for global manufacturing. The fourth engine is the digital micro-miracle. This is an area that has deeply astonished global observers, sometimes even leaving Western nations feeling envious. If you are on the streets of New York or London and want to wire money to a friend, you often have to rely on traditional banking systems, endure multi-day delays, and pay hefty transaction fees. If you swipe a credit card, merchants are slapped with a 2% to 3% fee by banks. But in India, traditional financial architecture has been completely outclassed by a digital infrastructure framework known as the India Stack. The crown jewel of this system is UPI, the Unified Payments Interface. According to data from the National Payments Corporation of India, UPI's monthly transaction volume has breached a staggering 10 billion transactions, with monthly volumes exceeding 15 trillion rupees, commanding nearly 46% of all real-time digital payments globally. This success was built on a thrilling corporate battle. In 2016, India's richest man, Mukesh Ambani, launched a mobile network called Jio under his conglomerate, Reliance Industries. Ambani deployed billions of dollars in capital to spark a brutal price war, offering several months of entirely free 4G data and voice calls to the entire population. This scorched earth strategy completely shattered the existing telecom order, causing mobile data prices in India to plummet by over 95%, dropping to less than 10 cents per gigabyte, making it the cheapest mobile data in the world. Once data became accessible to the masses, the Modi government used iron-fisted subsidies to ensure the UPI system remained completely free of charge with instant second-level clearing. Today, whether you walk into a luxury mall in New Delhi, a rural tea stall, or come across a street beggar by a railway station, almost everyone carries a unique UPI QR code. The microscopic capillaries of digitalization have fully penetrated India's informal economy, bringing hundreds of millions of unbanked citizens into the digital financial era overnight. The fifth engine is the infrastructure blitz. In global perception, India used to be synonymous with nightmarish transit, dilapidated trains with passengers hanging from the roofs, and unpaved, perpetually congested national highways. This abysmal infrastructure was long the single greatest deterrent for foreign investors looking at India. In recent years, however, the Modi government has embarked on a massive, strongman-driven infrastructure blitz under a master national plan called Gati Shakti, injecting over $100 billion annually into capital expenditures. Look at the hard data from official agencies. Over the past decade, the total length of India's national highways has expanded by nearly 60%, growing from under 90,000 kilometers to over 140,000 kilometers today, with dozens of kilometers of new roads paved every single day. In the railway sector, 100% of the country's main rail lines have undergone electrification, and modern high-speed rail projects are advancing rapidly. Furthermore, the number of operational airports nationwide has doubled, and automated mega-container ports have risen along the southern coastline. This staggering speed of transformation is completely shattering old global stereotypes of Indian inefficiency and bureaucratic delay. However, after analyzing these 5 exhilarating growth engines, any rational observer must pause and ask a fundamental question. If India is indeed so perfect, why hasn't it broken into the ranks of developed nations yet? Now, let us tear away the carefully packaged PR data and look at the cold, harsh, and sobering reality on the flip side of the coin. First is the extreme chasm of wealth inequality. When you look at India's massive total GDP ranking among the world's top economies, you must confront its per capita GDP, which still ranks near the bottom globally, a figure less than a quarter of China's. This means that India's bigness is built purely on its population base of 1.4 billion, while poverty remains the defining reality for the bottom tiers of society. Worse still, the fruits of economic growth are not being shared equally. Authoritative reports reveal a shocking reality: the richest 1% of India's population controls over 40% of the nation's total wealth. This concentration of wealth is at an all-time high, surpassing even the peak of British colonial rule. India's economy is undergoing a stark, K-shaped recovery. The upward arm of the K represents a handful of mega-conglomerates like Tata, Adani, and Ambani, who control the nation's energy, telecom, ports, and retail lifelines. Their net worth expands exponentially on the stock market. They build multi-million-dollar private skyscrapers in Mumbai and throw lavish weddings costing hundreds of millions of dollars that attract global political and business elites. Meanwhile, the downward arm of the K represents the vast majority of ordinary citizens and rural farmers. Faced with severe inflation, their real purchasing power has stagnated or even shrunk, leaving hundreds of millions of citizens still dependent on monthly government grain rations just to survive. Second is the perilous trap of jobless growth amid a demographic dividend. Wall Street loves to talk about India's youth bulge, but a massive population is a double-edged sword. If a country cannot provide decent, stable jobs for these young people, that supposed dividend can transform into severe social unrest and security crises overnight. According to data from the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, India's overall unemployment rate hovers stubbornly between 7% and 8%, while the unemployment rate for youth aged 20 to 24 has breached 20%. This has created a bizarre phenomenon where India's GDP races forward, but the job market fails to expand, a textbook case of jobless growth. The high-end IT and software service sector, while incredibly lucrative and internationally renowned, is a capital and technology-intensive industry that employs only about 5 million people nationwide. For the tens of millions of young Indians entering the labor market every year only to face immediate unemployment, these 5 million positions are a drop in the ocean. Meanwhile, low-end manufacturing sectors like apparel, footwear, and electronics assembly, which are actually capable of absorbing low-skilled workers, are struggling to survive due to various systemic bottlenecks. There is another critical data point that mainstream media often ignores. According to World Bank statistics, India's female labor force participation rate has long languished at around 24%. This is not only far below the global average of nearly 50%, but even lower than that of several conservative countries. Deeply rooted traditional norms and safety concerns keep millions of educated women out of the workforce. Consequently, India's heavily hyped 14 billion population dividend is effectively cut in half because half of its population cannot participate in economic production. Finally, there are the dual nightmares of educational deficit and bureaucratic red tape. While India's tech elites are exceptionally brilliant, ordinary foundational education across the country is in disarray. Annual education reports show that over half of teenagers aged 14 to 18 in rural India cannot correctly solve a simple 3-digit by 1-digit division math problem, and many cannot fluidly read a basic text in their own state language. Millions of young people counted as labor supply on paper lack the basic literacy, discipline, and technical capability required to operate machinery in a modern factory. Beyond the quality of labor, the bureaucratic red tape embedded in the business environment remains a persistent nightmare for foreign investors. Despite the central government's efforts to streamline approvals, local-level hurdles like complex land acquisition laws, fragmented tax systems, and state-specific labor protection regulations continue to stall foreign enterprises. For instance, Indian law dictates that any factory employing more than 100 workers must obtain explicit government permission before conducting layoffs, a rule that discourages companies from expanding their scale in the first place. This explains why over the past few years, alongside the influx of capital, numerous world-class automotive giants and multinational pharmaceutical corporations have found themselves entangled in local bureaucratic quagmires and labor disputes, ultimately absorbing billions of dollars in losses before exiting the Indian market entirely. Within foreign investment circles, a cautionary phrase has begun to circulate. India is not just a gold rush for foreign capital, it can easily become its graveyard. This is the reality beneath the surface. In global economic forums, the single most popular question remains: can India replicate China's economic miracle? Will it become the next China? When we dissect the core economic DNA of both nations, the definitive answer is clear. India will never become the next China. The foundational logic of their respective rises is completely different from the base code up. The China model is driven by state-directed development, heavy infrastructure investment, and an export-oriented manufacturing engine. When China was at a similar stage of development, manufacturing consistently commanded over 30% or even close to 40% of its GDP, earning it the definitive title of the world's factory. China relied on strong centralized execution to implement sweeping land reforms and build massive infrastructure, transforming hundreds of millions of rural laborers into highly disciplined, efficient factory workers supported by a flawless national network of high-speed rail, power grids, and expressways. The policy continuity and sheer speed of execution delivered by this centralized model are virtually unprecedented in global history. The Indian path, conversely, is shaped by a federal democratic system driven by domestic consumption and characterized by leapfrog growth in services and the digital economy. India's manufacturing sector has remained stubbornly bottlenecked at around 15% of GDP. It is not a politically homogeneous state, but rather a complex, loose federation of states. In India, different states speak entirely different languages, are ruled by opposing political parties, and harbor conflicting interests. When the central government attempts to implement a nationwide tax reform or land acquisition policy, it often triggers years of political horse trading with state governments. For example, if the government seeks to acquire land to construct a high-speed railway, protests from local unions and opposition factions can tie the project up in court battles for years. This governance model inevitably results in endless internal negotiation, prolonged decision-making cycles, and frequent policy reversals. More critically, the service sector and digital economy that India currently relies on concentrate wealth heavily at the very tip of the social pyramid. They cannot generate the hundreds of millions of low-end jobs that allowed vast numbers of ordinary farmers in China to escape poverty rapidly during its manufacturing boom. Therefore, India's rise will not be a uniform, breakneck, China-style sprint. Instead, it will be a uniquely Indian journey, marked by heavy turbulence, fits and starts, internal compromise, and social friction, yet driven by a sheer scale so massive that the rest of the world simply cannot afford to look away. As we look toward the horizon of the next 2 decades, India is betting its entire future on a series of bold, high-tech frontiers. According to the master blueprint laid out by the government, the nation aims to push its economy toward the $30 trillion mark by the centenary of its independence, lifting the country out of poverty once and for all. To achieve this goal, India is displaying immense ambition in cutting-edge industries, utilizing remarkably low-cost models. With budgets lower than those of Hollywood sci-fi films, they have successfully landed rovers on the moon and are rapidly scaling up a low-cost commercial space launch sector. Recognizing its acute vulnerability in domestic petroleum, India is leveraging its massive corporate conglomerates to pour tens of billions of dollars into the deserts of Gujarat, building massive green hydrogen plants and mega solar farms, aiming for 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030. Amid the ongoing global semiconductor realignment, New Delhi is offering massive financial subsidies to ensure chip fabrication plants are built directly on Indian soil. Yet, the underlying political and social risks remain impossible to ignore. Strong nationalist political narratives are widening social fractures within the country. Geopolitically, India is performing a high-wire balancing act of multi-alignment among global powers, happily accepting technology and capital from the West while simultaneously defying Western pressure to import massive quantities of cheap energy from Russia. While this strategy yields significant short-term gains from all sides, it introduces substantial external volatility over the long term. History never repeats itself identically. India will not become the next United States, nor will it become the next China. Over the next 20 years, amid a highly turbulent and volatile global landscape, if there is one emerging economic center that remains entirely unpredictable and impossible to ignore, it will almost certainly be India. However, whether this massive awakening elephant will successfully smash through its historical shackles to charge ahead or find itself completely tripped up by its own deep wealth inequality, employment crises, and bureaucratic quagmires remains to be seen. The answer to this question will not only shape the destiny of 1.4 billion people, but will redefine the distribution of global economic power for the next 30 years. And that answer is being written right now by the young generation coding in air-conditioned offices in Bangalore, and by those deftly scanning UPI QR codes amidst the heat and torrential rains of Mumbai's informal economy.